Welcome to the MVP Show. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/343. Before we chat with today's guest, has a quick message from our sponsors. Sponsor today is the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. This is the 5th year that I'll be running the program to turbocharge your BizApps career. So if you're interested in taking your career to the next level in business applications, check out nz365guy.com/mentoring for my next intake. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Scotland. He's a Dynamics CRM technical lead. He's in his current year as a first-time MVP. He studied law and a postgrad in international IT law to chase his infatuation with Ally McBeal, but ended up becoming a geek. He enjoys reading, watching shows on Netflix, Amazon Prime, playing the guitar, PS4 during his spare time. He also likes to walk, take soft walks on the beach, exercise, and take occasional photos. Main interests are football, Formula One, and NFL. He is originally from northwest Scotland, grew up in Northern Ireland, spent a chunk of adulthood in Aberdeen, and currently settled in Edinburgh with his family. He works for an end user rather than a partner, something we're going to drill into today. You can find him on Twitter, Ryan Maclean 365, or his website, ryanmaclean365.com. Ryan, welcome to the show, mate.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
How was that for an intro?
Yeah, pretty spectacular intro. I'm like, is that me talking about? Sounds
Covered
like
a lot of ground.
Sure yeah, there's a lot to get through, isn't there?
So Ally McBeal, didn't she end up marrying, what's his name? That dude from...
Yeah, it was
Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, so obviously you covered, I grew up in Northern Ireland in relative poverty. I grew up in a very kind of poor area, and it wasn't a very aspirational area either. So not very many people left the area, still don't. And I remember watching Ally McBeal, particularly on TV, and being like, that looks really cool, being an attorney. Obviously, that's an American term. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. I think I was like maybe 10 years old, and people just laughed at me, being like, people from where we're from don't become lawyers. And so I'm super stubborn and pig-headed, and so I decided, well, I'm just going to prove you all wrong. And so many years later, off I went to university to study law with these great aspirations in mind.
I like it. So tell me, living in Edinburgh, I mean, heck, what a nice place to live. I love that city.
Yeah, I love it too. I've been here for, I think it'll be 4 years this year that we moved down. So my wife is originally from the Central Belt in Scotland, so just outside Edinburgh. And she's a twin, and her twin sister lives in Edinburgh. So she'd always had plans for us to move back down here. And then, as fate would have it, I got headhunted by the company I now work for down here, and they offered me a job down here. So the fates intertwined, as it were, and down we moved. But what a place! It's such a beautiful city, and actually we were just walking around the city at the weekend. Now that we're actually allowed back out of our house with COVID kind of beginning to go on the wane, and I was just, I'm like, oh man, we're so lucky to live here. It's just such a beautiful city, and there's always something going on. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
So tell us a bit about your company that you work for.
Sure. So I work for a company called Hymans Robertson. We work in financial services. We're actually 100 years old this year, so quite an old firm. And so we do kind of pensions investment advice. So any pension schemes, we advise them on where to put their investments to get best return. We do actuarial services. And we do third-party administration, amongst many other things, as well as developing products for the industry. So a very tech-focused firm. I think we're about 1,000 employees, enough that around about 25 to 30% work in IT-related roles. So quite a super interesting firm to be a part of. And actually, I think, obviously we've all been through this crazy situation with COVID, and it's just reinforced my belief that I work for such a good firm. They've been so good to us throughout this whole last 15 months or so, and so I've just super enjoyed working here, which has been great. I do feel extremely fortunate.
I can't reference what I'm about to say, but I have a feeling that the whole idea of pensions retirement scheme, that type of thing, actually originated in Scotland. And it was like some parish priest or something like that, or vicar, or I don't know what, actually came up with the concept of making sure that beyond you finishing your job, that you had the funds to live on. So, and somehow I've read somewhere, I feel it came from Scotland.
I mean, I guess it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not sure for certain, but I think if you look at Scotland's impact on the world for such a small nation, I mean, even now we're only 6 million people, but actually the impact world, television was invented in Scotland, the telephone was invented in Scotland, penicillin was invented from Scotland, the pneumatic tire was invented in Scotland. So all the great inventions, we've always been a nation that has been very inventive, and so I you can maybe tell I'm very proud to be Scottish. I'm very passionate about it, and
How did you end up in Northern Ireland? Was it
my
Northern Ireland?
yeah, so my mum's from Northern Ireland, so when I was 5 years old, her and my dad split up, and so I've got three older brothers, and so me and one of my older brothers went to Ireland with my mum, and my two eldest brothers stayed here with my dad.
Yeah, and of course, it's only a stone's throw, right, from Scotland to Northern Ireland. It isn't. Can't you just take the Giant's Causeway and walk across it?
just about, yeah. You can almost do it. There's regular ferry services, and obviously there's flights now. But when I was younger, then we got ferries. Although I'm from the Northwest Highlands of Scotland, so we'd get the ferry into Stranraer, which is kind of on the southwest coast, and then it was about six or so hours north to get to my dad's house. So so quite a long journey every time. So a stone's throw, but actually felt quite distant.
Yeah, yeah. Now, are you a whiskey lover?
Absolutely love whiskey.
What's your favorite Irish drop?
Scottish.
Sorry,
Scottish drop.
no. Sorry,
Very,
no. Hey, we're
very
not going to
much.
talk about Jamisons just now. Let's not talk about Jamisons.
Yeah,
Let's talk
no.
about your favorite Scottish drop. Exactly.
Lagavulin. So I love the Isla whiskies. Anything with a big bit of peat smoke, I absolutely love. We had Lagavulin as the whiskey that we served in a quake at our wedding. So I've always just had an affinity for it. I think, and it's funny actually. My wife doesn't particularly like whiskey, but really loves the smoky whiskies, which is really odd to I think everybody who's ever tried whiskey, because usually if you like whiskey, a lot of people are just like the smoky ones are just too much for me. Whereas my wife's like, oh, that's really good, but anything else I'm not interested in. So always kind of makes me laugh. But yeah, I just adore it. I think, and I've got a fair selection. When I lived in Aberdeen, I had this great little whiskey shop near my house that I'd go to, and they always had new ones in that they would be tasting. So you'd always drop down, and the guy would be like, oh, I just got this new one in, and he knew what you'd like, and he'd be like, oh, why don't you try this one? So I ended up with just this extensive selection of whiskies that I'm working my way through.
So, have you been to Lagavulin and Isla?
I've not been. We actually had plans to go last year, so that went well. So our plan is to hire a camper van and go over there, and then just do a bit of a cycle tour across the distilleries, particularly because I don't really fancy driving them, because then you can't sample the produce, and what's the point of visiting otherwise?
I took a rental car over there. We took a ferry across with our rental car, and we stayed for a couple of days, my wife and I, and we did all the distilleries there. And of course, she got to drink, and I didn't. And I mean, we like the tour of the distillery at Lagerville, absolutely epic. If you can go, try and go on a weekend, is what I found. And the reason is, like, we had the tour guide was an old timer, right? Been at Lagerville over 30 years. So before it was acquired by all its, current, I think Japanese maybe owners or something.
Yeah,
And so,
I think it's Suntory, isn't it? I think, or maybe
yeah.
they own it.
But the thing is that he was old school and that he took us right next to all the big hot, vats and things like that. And he was like, listen, nobody's here on the weekend, so let's not worry too much about health and safety. And he gave us the detailed tour. And of course, as part of the tour, right, they give you these dram tokens so you can get maybe 2 drams at the bar afterwards. And of course, he's the same guy that then serving you at the bar. And so we had 4 drams all up. It would have been 2 for Meg, 2 for me. So I send Meg up. She takes her 4, dram tokens, comes back with her 4 drams, and she's got 8 dram tokens in her hand. I'm like, what's the story there? And he was like, yeah. The guy's like, yeah, you keep those, and here's 4 more. Like, So like I love it. Like it was epic. It was epic time. But I tell you what, Brook Lardy, I don't know if you've had too many drop from
I have,
there.
yeah, I've got a bottle downstairs.
Yeah, I think they try for the highest peat content in the world, parts per million. And honestly, wow, I bought I bought a bottle for my good friend in England, Nigel. Bought him a bottle of the highest parts per million. Absolutely amazing. And then when I left the UK, Alison Maligan, she bought me a bottle of Brooklardy, which I'm about halfway through now. Very
Nice.
nice.
Yeah, it was my birthday last week, so one of my friends came down and from Aberdeen for a barbecue last weekend, and so they brought a bottle of whiskey down for me, which was quite nice. So it's always a nice gift for people to give you. I think I remember actually when I turned 30, my brother, who doesn't really drink whiskey, he was like, "Oh, I'll get you a 30-year-old whiskey." And I don't think he realized just how expensive that is. So I ended up with a 30-year-old bottle of Armagnac instead. He was like, "This is much easier." So, but actually, it was a treat. But yeah, it was just like he was like, "30-year-old whiskey. I don't like you that much, Ryan." I was like, "Yeah, fair."
But don't you feel that the older the whiskey gets, the more it becomes smoother and loses its the peatiness, if you like, over
Yeah,
time?
it becomes much smoother. I guess it depends. It depends on the whiskey, but certainly I find that it mellows out because obviously I guess the longer it's in the wood, the more it absorbs that wood character, and so you get much more of those notes. Because obviously with Scotch whiskey, it's in used barrels effectively. So that I guess that's the difference between a Scotch whiskey and like an American bourbon, like Jack Daniel's, is that they use virgin casks. We use kind of the ones that they use, and that virgin wood flavor, that kind of sweetness that you get will start to leach through kind of after a long time, and so you start to kind of mellow out. But yeah, no, I think it's so interesting to kind of try them. I've got a quite an affinity with young whiskies as well, though. I like trying. I've been fortunate enough with Cowlila, which is another of the Isla whiskies, to have. I think we've got 5, 6, and a 7-year-old bottling of that, which is really interesting, and to try it year on year to see how it changes, how the color starts to develop, how the flavor profile kind of improves. So
Wow.
yeah.
I disliked whiskey until I went to Isla. Then totally changed. Now a
Yeah,
fan.
I think it's like that with a lot of things, isn't it? I think once you have understood the process, and you go through that, then you start to appreciate it a bit more. Because my wife and I have been to a few different distillery tours. So Glenkinshi's one near us in Edinburgh. So after we got married, we were staying down near here, and we went down to Glenkinchie, and they do a similar thing. They give you the kind of drink tokens and give you a few different tastings at the end. And then we also, when we were in Ireland in Dublin, we went and did the Jameson's one, which was really good fun. Really interesting experience there.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I've done the Jamisons a couple of times, but also then further south in Ireland, you can go to the whole, uh, where the big distilleries and stuff are, which I think Jamison's is owned by somebody else now as well.
Yeah, I think that most of them are owned by the big conglomerates, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. But anyhow, this is an MVP show, not a whiskey
Yeah.
aficionado show. But one of the things I'm interested in discussing with you, Ryan, is that I often coach people on career choices. And I know, you've been through the 90-day mentoring challenge with me, and I'm halfway through it at the moment, and this whole thing is coming up again around what are the career, what type of organizations? And I always break it into three. And no one's added to that, and I don't know if you can, but you can either work for what I would call an end customer. So which is what you're doing, right? You actually work in a company that has implemented Dynamics or the Power Platform, and you run the systems, you build out the new apps and solutions as the business has need. You might oversee a team of folks that are coming up with the ideas, etc. And then you have people that work for Microsoft partners, generally across multiple projects, and then you could work for Microsoft. Those are kind of three distinct categories that I make out. Now, one of the things is, and I use this, as I say, recently in talking with somebody, is that, I've always been big on recommending that you should work for a partner for 3 to 5 years if you're brand new to the game. And the reason is you get exposure to lots of different stuff, from project methodologies to change management to, the full ALM lifecycle management, all that type of great stuff you would get across multiple potential industries. And then, I suggest that after that, you try for a stint at Microsoft, 2 or 3, 4 years, or longer if you pivot with inside Microsoft, and then um, go work for a customer for through to retirement type thing if you're so way inclined. And my feeling around this is that if you look at where is the money, if you're looking at it purely from chasing the money, right? I feel like, and could be wrong, but Microsoft is probably the lowest paying. Then you would have partners in the mid tier, and then you'd have customers at the top tier when it comes to income potential. And the big difference I find between partners and customer working is that if you've been in customer land, you know the dreaded timesheet and utilization targets and goals. But they tend also not to pay anywhere near as much as what you would get if you were working for an end customer. Now, that's my kind of spiel that I often talk about. What's your take on it?
I would say that's well. I mean, I guess I've not worked for a partner or for Microsoft, but I've certainly been interviewed
But
by
you've gone
plenty.
for jobs, right?
Yeah,
You've
I've
got
been
you've
interviewed
been
by
you've been
plenty of
courted.
partners. Yeah, I have, and yeah, I would say that financially for me, I'm better off at an end customer firm, but which is I mean obviously the reason we work is to pay bills, right? Like amongst many other things, my mortgage needs to get paid, so I need to get income, but that's not, I guess, for me my primary motivation. For me, I guess it's more happenstance than anything that I've ever ended up working a customer side, and it's through, I guess, the way I got into working in Dynamics generally is that without kind of going into a whole history lesson, I was working for the university where I'd studied. I got a job in their intellectual property team, and then was kind of working with their commercial team. And their commercial team were using a CRM product, not Dynamics at that time. I just didn't know what they were doing with it, and so I'd kind of got into helping them and working with the developers on that side because I'm just a massive geek. I've always been into working with computers, and so I'd taken on some responsibility to liaise with the supplier and to do some kind of basic customizations. I then got recruited by an oil and gas firm in Aberdeen who had Dynamics. And again, it was a relatively small firm. I think we were like 20 people at that time. And they had Dynamics, but they basically used it as an expensive Rolodex. They didn't know what they were doing with it. And I'd got really interested in Dynamics weirdly because you mentioned I'm a Formula One fan. I remember Lotus F1 got Microsoft Dynamics sponsored them, and that was the first I'd heard of Microsoft Dynamics. Like I said, I wasn't really working in the CRM space, and so I googled it and I was like, oh, I've heard of this product. And then I went to this company and they had it, and I was like, this is amazing. It's like all of my interests like lining up, and so they didn't know what they were doing with it, and I was like, well, can I just have a play with it then? And I can see what we can do with it. And part of what I was doing at that point as well was I worked in sales, I worked in project management, and I did ISO auditing, so ISO 9001, which is quality management. Um, and so we were a very process driven organization, and I got so frustrated that we were failing process and that we were wasting so much money and wasting so much time. And I was like, well, why can't I just develop the system? And so I'd then taken on responsibility for doing that, and I'm massively indebted to all of the MVPs who have come before me who blogged so frequently and who answered my questions on the community forum, of which I'm sure plenty of them thought they were very stupid, and all the free community solutions. I remember like Jason Latimer put out loads of free community solutions, and Aidan Cascella had put out his workflow element solution, and all those tools made my life easier, and I just got so passionate about building that to the point that I wanted to drop all of the other stuff I was doing. And then I went to another oil and gas firm where I focused purely on Dynamics, and so built it up from there, and now then got headhunted and recruited to work for the firm that I work for. So it was never really a conscious career choice, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, that I'm only going to work customer side. But having done it now for I think 8 or 9 years, working in Dynamics, I just don't know that I would want to go partner side. I think what I really enjoy and what the conversations I have with people who I know is I get full control over the system. So I'm a control freak. I think we do the kind of color wheel kind of profiles, and I'm just this kind of big red profile of personality that wants to be in charge of everything. But beyond that, I get fully invested in the process. So I enjoy the business analysis side of it. I enjoy working with my end users to understand their process and to be able to challenge them. I think the difference when you're a partner is, to a certain degree, for partners, and I'm not, I'm using a broad brush approach here. I know different partners are different, but some partners are just kind of in and out. They're mercenaries. They come in, they do a job, they dump it, and they move on, and they forget about it. I like to see the process through, and I don't. You're just not going to get that. But I also get to do my own R&D on my time. I'm not timesheeted, so when there's a cool new feature comes out, I get to spend time really investing and looking at saying, well, what could we do with this? How would that help my users? Whereas if I was working at a partner, it's all about utilization. So if I want to do that, well, I have to do it on my own time. And don't get me wrong, I still do plenty of stuff on my own time. Clearly, I do blogging and whatever else, but I get to, but my work are willing to invest in me to do that, and they're willing to invest in the platform. And I think that's really, to me, what makes the difference is that I get to be supported to do this type of stuff, and therefore my employer and my end users benefit from all of that. They like I what maybe blow my own trumpet, but I think they benefit from having me in the firm, rather than outsourcing it. And before I joined this firm, we had a partner in place who'd put in place Dynamics, but they really put it in place as a bit of a structural framework to support what we want to do with SharePoint, and they bodged so many things. And so since I joined the company, like I say, coming on 4 years now, our utilization of the platform has increased significantly. We've gone from, on average, I think 200 users per month using it. We're now up towards 700 or 800. We've just moved to the cloud 2 months ago, and we've invested. Everybody in the firm is now on a minimum of the Power Apps per user plan license. So we've invested heavily, and we just updated our core business priorities for people, to say, here's the things you need to do. And one of those core business priorities is using Dynamics properly, and making sure their data is in the system and up to date. So the firm has invested in it from the top down. They're invested in me, and so I feel rewarded personally, professionally, and so it's such a, I think it's a very unique experience, but I'd highly recommend it to anybody. But the downside I would say is my support network is really the people that I get to speak to. So I'm very fortunate that I'm a very social guy, and I speak to all the other MVPs and other people in the community. And we've got various Slack groups that we can use for that, and I can reach out to. And the community is so welcoming. I'm sure you experience it yourself. If you've got a question, you pop it out somewhere, whether that's Twitter, community forum, LinkedIn. There's always people willing to help you. And so that makes a difference. Whereas I think, in partner, obviously they're more invested in the platform, and so they have wider experience. So somebody else will have experience of that. So we still use partners. We still rely on their support.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. This is so good. And look at this. It's 23 minutes in, which is overtime.
Sorry, that was a ramble.
so interesting talking to you, Ryan, and you give such a really good perspective. As in, it's unique in a lot of ways to what I see or what I hear in the community, and it's so good. You're right that we've got this community network with the MVPs outside of what we do for jobs and stuff. So totally amazing. I always like to wrap up, Ryan, with some quick fire questions. Are you ready for yours? Okay, what's something that you disagree with the way you were raised?
Something I disagree with the way I was raised. Oh God, good question. My mum and my stepdad, I guess, they didn't have as broad a view on life as perhaps I do. So I was I've always been very ambitious. And ambition wasn't something that was fostered or encouraged. And so I grew up with my stepdad in Ireland. He was also very competitive, and so I always believed my mum had kids with my stepdad, and so he always wanted them to do better than I did because I wasn't his child. So that stuff I disagree with.
Yeah, totally. Okay, which celebrity do you shamelessly follow in the news? Apart from Ally McBeal.
Yeah, I guess Elon Musk is probably the one. And I'm not really into celebrity stuff, but Elon Musk, because from a tech experience, I'm a massive space nerd as well. And so I just find that guy endlessly fascinating, because Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, is a great person. Elon Musk, the personality, is crazy.
I love it. As in, like, if I was asked that question, you've got it in spades. It's what my answer would be. I was so pleased recently to purchase, and be invoiced from SpaceX, a product, and of course that's
you got Starlink, right?
Starlink, yeah. So
yeah.
I've paid money to SpaceX, and I'm currently in a queue waiting for my dish to arrive, which should be any time now. in that all our constellation is pretty much, I think we're still at 90% coverage now.
It's so good, isn't it? I just love what SpaceX are doing for the space industry. I think.
Oh, totally revolutionized it.
I still watch like the SpaceX launches every time. And watching them land, I'm just like, it still blows my mind. This 10-story building effectively flying down, several thousand miles an hour and landing on a tiny barge at sea. It shouldn't be possible, but it is.
Final question: what's your most used emoji?
Probably the cry and laughter emoji. I think I probably overuse that one. It's always top of my list.
Do you know, I saw a new emoji for the first time the other day, which is apparently was just released last year, and they update the standards for emoji. I don't even know if it's hit iOS yet, but it was a beaver.
Oh, really? I can only imagine that being misused, like the avocado.
How much is it going to get misused?
Yeah.
Like the aubergine and that beaver icon, they are going to get misused even more than ever.
Yeah, that and the peach. It's just that's just begging to be misused, isn't it?
Yeah. Crazy times. Brings to mind the puff of wind as well. But let's not go there. Ryan, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I'll make sure we tag you in this when we go live. Thanks again.
Oh, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I so enjoyed this episode with Ryan that I think that I'll do another episode with him on the Power Platform show where we drill into how they're using Dynamics 365 with inside his company, how he went through migration, etc., from on-prem to online, and all the backlog of projects that he's got on the play for the platform. As I say, I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, also known as the NZ365 guy. Please like and subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you would like to contribute to the show, please go to, where should you go to? You should go to buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 guy. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much and see you next time.